I love the fact that I'm the one who's in charge of whether I fail or succeed. It's a very scary place, perhaps, to be, but I'm not scared.
Please stay with me, never leave.
Unlost Cause is a community that shares stories of individuals 40 and beyond who found the courage to reclaim their dreams and live without regrets. I'm David New, and I hope these stories help you find joy, purpose, and passion in a life true to you. Welcome to Unlost Cause, the podcast that celebrates stories of reinvention and turning dreams that once seemed lost into powerful realities. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Veronica Zolotoochin to Unlost Cause. Veronica spent over 2 decades in the high-stakes world of finance working as a bond and stockbroker, but despite the success, she felt suffocated, disconnected from what she truly loved and brought her joy. In a bold move, she walked away from corporate life to pursue something that has been a lifelong passion of her, dogs. She bought a small dog walking business in Salt Lake City called Dogs and Butterfly that provides bespoke personal dog care in Salt Lake City and now in Staunton, Virginia. Dogs have been Veronica's passion throughout her life, and they hold a very special place in her heart. Her story is about courage, intuition, and embracing a life where passion meets purpose. Veronica, welcome to Unlost Cause today.
Thank you, David. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. So, like a lot of things in life, things happen in childhood. So I'm curious, growing up as a child, did you have a lot of pets around, particularly dogs?
So we started out with guinea pigs. My mom was not a big animal person. She grew up on a farm for a little bit, but animals were outdoor things. And as children, we wanted pets. So we started out with guinea pigs. But it wasn't until we moved to Santiago, Chile in about 1978, we ended up getting a dog. She was a Cocker Spaniel, sweetest thing ever. And well, we fell in love. Mom still wasn't so sure about the dog, but, she took her in. My dad grew up with dogs and loved dogs. So we shared that passion. And she really was an awesome dog. She would let us brush her. She would let us do all sorts of things with her. And when my mom wasn't looking, we'd get her up on the couch or have her sleep with us at night. Of course, we got into trouble when if we got caught. But that dog was probably my first taste of it awakened something in me, the companionship that that sweet girl brought. And then she had a couple of litters. And so we grew up with dogs after that in the home. And when I moved out to go to college, I really missed the dogs, but living in a dorm, you can't have one. So as soon as I was able to have a dog, probably 4 or 5 years after I moved to Salt Lake to go to college, I got my first puppy, which was a neighbor's dog had a litter, and she was an Akita German Shepherd mix. And oh, my heart just grew. That dog was my companion. I taught her how to walk off leash by giving her cat treats. We also had cats.
Okay.
We also convinced my mom that cats were okay. That dog was my everything. Unfortunately, I was living with what was going to be my future husband, my future first husband. And we had broken up, and she was actually my gift to him. So he took her with him when we broke up and moved out, and she ended up getting hit by a car.
Oh, no.
So that was the first time I really felt major devastation from the loss of a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And at about that same time, I realized in myself that kids weren't going to be my thing, but dogs and animals were. The time that I took with Murphy, the Akita German Shepherd mix, was huge. I mean, I walked her first thing in the morning. If I could come home in the middle of the day to get her out and walk her, the moment we got home, we did things. And at night, another walk because we didn't have a fenced yard. She was brilliant. She was brilliant. And again, the loss I felt was something I'd never thought I'd feel.
Yeah.
And then it just went from there. We ended up having my ex-husband and I ended up getting married. And we had already owned together a chocolate lab that and died young from a rattlesnake bite.
Oh,
Our friends were taking her out on a bike ride. They went to Antelope Island, which is a wonderful wild place right next to the Great Salt Lake. And they brought her home, unfortunately, dead. And the pain that we felt was even more than with our first dog. So my husband brought, within about 4 days, two little chocolate lab puppies. And then that was it. I mean, that was truly it. So these
yeah.
girls, they were our children, and we didn't go anywhere without them, or unless my mother-in-law take care of them. So when we got married, our honeymoon was camping because we
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the spark was always there, that passion was always there, but it was that first dog who really touched me inside. And yeah, my love for animals has always been there, but it really developed in my 20s and 30s.
Yeah. No, I even when you talk about them, I can sense the emotion, the excitement, the depth. So I'm curious, like, what is it about that connection you have with dogs in particular that just seemed to it's like a next level, this like awakening that you mentioned?
There is a biological reason this happens, which is what they call the love hormone,
Mm-hmm.
oxytocin. For some people, it's stronger. For others, it's not so much. But found refuge and understanding from the
Mm.
dogs. I truly feel a connection with most animals, with dogs in particular. I have the ability to come into a house where, dogs might be maybe, stranger danger. And I
Mm-hmm.
sit down and the dogs just come to me.
Mm-mm.
Um, it's an odd thing, perhaps, but I feel a true connection and the love that they give you. I'm dyslexic and have a hard time reading out loud, but the dogs don't care when I read out loud to them. They make it
Mm-hmm.
easy and they don't care what you look like. They don't care how you smell or that you didn't do your hair that day, or that you were gone for 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah,
They're always, always so happy to see you, to be
yeah,
with you, to share a space.
yeah,
And that is, I think, a unique relationship that sometimes is very hard to find human to human. But
yeah,
it always, they're there. They
yeah.
just say, okay, we're yours.
Yeah. So we alluded to this at the beginning that your first job was kind of the opposite of oxytocin, which is dollars and cents, being a powerhouse stock and bond trader, a broker. And so given that kind of that joy of dogs and pets and animals ignited early in your life, why not biology or veterinary science or something in potentially in that field versus kind of like the opposite, kind of like dollars and cents?
So I didn't actually ever think I would be in the finance world.
Okay.
What I really wanted to be was a singer and stage actor. Is actually what
Wow.
I wanted to be. And my father said, no, you cannot be that. Go find something that'll make you money. Be a professional. And so I bounced around. I actually studied political science, thinking perhaps I could become an ambassador. We had traveled as young children, and I'd been exposed to diplomats. And I have actually a love of history
Hmm.
and had always been very interested in politics. But as I studied it, I realized that that is not what I wanted to do. So, as one of my jobs during college, I worked for a little widgets and gadgets company as their office manager, and I did payroll and that kind of thing. And I wanted to have a just a better paying job. I mean, it really came down to, paying the rent and paying for college. And I'm a people person, but I'm not a waitress material, meaning that I'm not a very strong person physically, or at least I wasn't. And I just really bounced around. So I went and applied for a job at a bank, a local
Hmm.
bank, and they looked at my resume and said, well, this payroll position that you have applied for has been filled. Well, we have this other position at a place called the Money Desk. I'll go check it out. They interviewed me and they said, yeah, we want to hire you. So I fell into finance. I did what are called repurchase agreements, and we helped fund the bank buying and selling Fed funds and other types of funding and investing. And that's actually how I ended up getting my Series 7 and my 24
Wow.
and doing what I did.
Yeah.
Just really dumb luck. And I enjoy talking to people. I really do. I do like people, but they're not so easy to read as dogs are.
Yeah. So,
So that's why I never even thought about, biology or becoming a vet. It was more like, become finance and my dad loved the fact that I had become a banker and that, he was a VP and he loved all of that. And so, that clicked a box for him, which was very important to me.
yeah.
Backing up a little bit, I think you and I talked about that my family are immigrants. My sister and I were born in Chile, and we moved to the United States in 1972. So having that immigrant background, my dad had been a chemical engineer. So, profession. My mom had graduated with a professional degree from college, or university, though, she stayed home and took care of us. My grandfather had been a lawyer and a senator in Chile.
Wow.
My other grandparents, my grandmother was a dentist in China. So there was a huge push to be professional.
Yeah.
And
I can see
so
that.
a path was open to me that I could then follow. Yeah, you couldn't have convinced me that I was ever going to go into finance. And then all of a sudden, there I am.
So now that you're on this pathway in finance that you said you fell into very serendipitously, and obviously you become a VP, so you're extremely successful in this role.
Well, I don't know about extremely, but I did well.
Did you ever daydream or allow yourself to daydream about like this passion you have around animals and specifically dogs? Like, maybe I'll do something about that. Or was that pilot light never even on during this like go-go years of establishing yourself?
Looking back, in all honesty, there had always been this idea that I would rather hang out with the dogs. I'm the kind of person that at a party, I'll go hang out with the dog versus the people. So in the back of my head, I think there was always this desire to do something with dogs. But to be honest, it wasn't ever developed. Not until the last 5 years of my career, where I was dissatisfied. It wasn't my passion. Finance was not my passion. And the industry in some respects had changed and my role had changed. And I could not see myself going forward, going to another bank or another institution. Yeah, I was being suffocated. And in that last 5 years, it started to dawn on me that what brought me the most joy were the dogs. It became clear that they were my joy.
Yeah.
They were my release valve. I mean, again, in the morning, I'd get up at 4 o'clock to take them on a big old walk at one of the parks so that we didn't run into anybody. Being labs, they were incredible. Great recall. I was their mama. So all I had to say was, okay, girls, come. They come.
Yeah.
My ex-husband would take them to work when they were puppies so that they weren't alone. He shared that passion. So
Got it.
that was huge that I had support that way. I come home first thing, girls got to walk. On the weekends, my most favorite thing was to hang out in the backyard with them. Or if we went up into the mountains to take them with us, or if we went to one of the many lakes, reservoirs around Salt Lake and throughout Utah, taking the dogs. I mean, literally, they were my life and they were my release valve.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until the last 5 years that I realized that I wanted to do something.
Yeah, when you say the word suffocated, it's such a evocative and powerful word that I think everyone can relate to. It's probably a lot of the listeners can as well, because it just feels like, and everyone's kind of been in a similar situation. So Tell me, like, when you started feeling that emotion and before you left, was that like a slow burn where the suffocation, where the oxygen level was just getting lower and lower and lower and lower, and then you broke? Or was there like a seminal moment where you're like, I'm done? So, yeah, walk me through that.
It was actually a slow burn.
Mm.
Um, I had first thought, well, maybe it's just where I'm working and what they have me doing. So I did apply and start looking at different companies to work for, maybe different roles, but nothing really caught my attention, caught my desire. And it really was a slow burn. And it was conversations with my ex-husband where I'm like, you know what? Maybe I want to do something with dogs. And at first it was, no, no, no. You've got a great job. They love you there. You've got a great future there. We can do that later. And he meant,
Ah.
later, like in our 60s or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And the pressure to stay from him, from my parents,
Yeah.
well, if you don't like what where you're at, just go get another job. I don't want another job,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
I didn't. I was truly dying inside. And every year that passed, I died more and more. I mean, I'm 5'5", so I'm not very tall. I was so depressed and so suffocated. I just put on weight. I was 198 pounds at my worst, and I could not get it off. I definitely found myself in some bad habits, the drinking,
Yep.
and the broker lifestyle
Yeah. It's a hard,
can
it's
be,
hard
well,
driving.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So all of that really, it caused my ex-husband and I to have marital issues after for a while.
Hmm.
I was so, I felt trapped, and I
Yeah.
felt like no one really understood that I needed to get out. There
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
more
Yeah.
pressure to stay, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I think you bring up such a great point that sometimes when, like everything's interconnected. So when we spend so much of our time at work, and if it's suffocating or trapped or drowning, that actually spills over into our personal lives, right? Like the other behaviors, like our sleep, our nutrition, our exercise, our mental health, our relationships with friends and family. And so you mentioned some of those, and and I think the listeners have to know that it shows up in a lot of places. And when the root problem gets addressed, then the opposite happens, right? The mental health, the physical exercise, the other things start unwinding and kind of getting back into balance.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, it was a slow burn. And my ex-husband and I started having some mm, very hard years, the last few years as well. I started to feel like a fraud in what I did. Uh,
Mm.
and I verbalized that to him and to other people. I'm like, I'm just a fraud. People didn't understand. And I don't know that I could verbalize it in any other way at the time. But I was playing a part. I
Hmm.
was,
Hmm.
this was a role. This was
Yeah,
not
yeah,
me.
yeah. So
Yeah.
then so it was a slow burn. And then I think you shared with me that you were there was also this intuitive part with some tarot cards that also highlighted that maybe there's something in the universe that was also conspiring to show you a different path. So can you share what that was about?
Yes. So, but the one thing I will say about the people that I worked with, my managers, my bosses, they were really incredible people. They mentored me through
Hmm.
my career, but my very last manager, she was great. So at this point in my career, I was now on the retail side, and our company was launching and promoting a online bond trading platform for the retail customer, not for the institutional, but for the retail.
Yeah.
And so we were going to these trade shows called the Money Show, and which meant that we had a lot of, downtime in the evenings. And she had a full life outside of work. And I rather envied that because
Mm.
she practiced Reiki, and we would do tarot cards. And she knew that I was struggling. I mean, it was, like I said, I had some really great managers that I could actually talk to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, and that I think is rare,
mm-hmm.
because they weren't there to undercut me.
Yeah.
She was really supportive. They all actually were. But we would do these readings, and that last year, time and time again, the cards that showed the person on the outside of a gate or outside of a wall where they're looking into a field where other people are or into a place that they want to be, but they're on the outside,
Mm,
but the gate is not locked. But there's a
mm,
hole in the wall that you can walk through. And she kept bringing this card up and saying, "You're the one who's not walking through. You're the one who has put up the gate. All you have to do is push through and you will be there. It's up to you. You have
yeah.
the power. It's in you."
Wow, that's super powerful. I mean, so much you think about that. So the gate was mentally like a barrier because you talk about, what society expects Veronica to do, what friends and family expect Veronica to do versus, listening to the heart and the soul. So then share like when you decided to leave, then afterwards, did you have a crystal clear plan of what you were going to do? Or was it just like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something different. And if it happens to deal with dogs, it's a bonus. Or were you crystal clear? I got to leave because I'm going to do something with dogs ASAP.
So back up a little bit more. As I mentioned, my ex-husband,
Yeah.
we had sold our house and moved up to an area called the Avenues in Salt Lake. We were renting a place. And he and I were trying to stay together. And there was a little bit of friction, but he still wanted to support me. And we had already been talking for about a year that I wanted to do something with dogs.
Okay.
So we had taken a trip down to Telluride. Colorado is a very dog friendly place. And we're like, well, maybe we can move to Telluride and I can open up a little dog shop and maybe I can learn dog training and maybe. But what kept coming up was, well, until you get that done, perhaps you can have, carry your licenses and work as a finance person there. So that thread of still, keeping me tied to
Yeah.
banking, to finance, to something like that was still extremely strong and pulling me in a different direction. But I said, okay, I'm going to sit
Mm-hmm.
down and make a plan. And as I'm telling my girlfriends about it now, I don't know if you've heard of a ladies' game named Bunko. Uh,
Yes, I've heard about that.
I was part of a Bunko group. And again, these ladies were open and, we had scientists and all sorts of professional and non-professional women in this group who were so incredibly supportive. And one of the gals said, well, I started walking dogs. And I said, yeah, I know. Yeah, that's great. She's like, well, the owner is looking to sell her business. She's moving in 2 weeks and she hasn't found anyone to buy it. And that business is actually called Guardian Pet Care, I think. And I said, huh. She said, why don't you maybe talk to her? So I had no real plan on what it was that I wanted to do with dogs, just I wanted to do something. So we set up a meeting, and in that 2 week period, after, looking at her financials, asking her about her business, she already had 3 walkers, including my friend, who were working for her. She had a list of customers and she had a very good reputation. And I thought, okay, let's do this. So again, serendipitously, I had a connection, and that connection led me to this business. Unfortunately, the night that I gave her a check for the business and got everything taken care of, came home, and my ex-husband said, you and the dogs will be fine. I can't do this. And
Wow.
yeah, so not sure that things happen for a reason, but for me, they happened. Everything said this was the right thing to do. You're
Mm-hmm.
taking a big leap, yes, but it felt like this was my whole life. I was turning a new leaf.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
going to say I wasn't absolutely scared.
Yeah.
Um, I fortunately, again, it's better to be lucky than good sometimes. Right about then, and I had to disclose that I bought a business to our compliance folks because in the finance world, you have to disclose any outside business. You have to be very transparent so that there is no insider trading
Yeah.
or
Conflict of
uh,
interest.
nonsense. You have to be very open about things. I disclosed to them that I was doing this. I was terrified. And then the company was doing layoffs. And I thought to myself, please lay me off because I know I'm going to be okay. I know that I actually have found the right thing. It's like deep hole over here. And though I was narrowly missing that deep hole, the old life, I was still terrified because that's what I knew. I'd been with this guy for 28 years, married 16. I'd been in the industry for 23 years, and I was 45. And what the
Mm-hmm.
hell was I doing? uh,
Yeah, yeah. I actually got goosebumps when you shared, like, you gave the check, this seminal moment in your career, and it's opening up a new chapter. And then your former husband's like, hey, you're on your own, go for it. I'm like, oh my gosh, the amount of emotions that I felt when you shared it, and then everything that's happening at work. But in there, you mentioned that you had this hope, and I felt a sense of like, inner confidence that, hey, I'm going to make it through. And was that through line or theme of this confidence that I felt, was that more because you just are a survivor and you always figure things out? Or was it more because you're tied to your passion, which is around dogs. And because of that, you had that confidence?
I learned confidence. I was always very shy, but being a woman in a man's world, you can't afford to be shy. You can afford to be feminine, you can afford to be a lot of things, but shy is not one of them. And I think the confidence came from the drive. It felt like once I made the decision, once I gave that check to buy this company, things started to fall into place. I had focus, I had drive, I had a joie de vivre.
Mm,
And I had 2 dogs that whenever I started crying, Sophie would jump up on the couch and lick my tears away, and Jasmine would curl up on my other side and just put her head on my lap, and they gave me so much comfort. Again,
mhm.
people can do that, but a dog does it so wholeheartedly. So the confidence came from, I think, the fact that I finally felt like I'd made all the right decisions at that point, right?
Yeah.
Everything was falling into place.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty powerful when you put it out in the universe how things can, start falling into place in a very positive way. And so once you give the check, have you told any friends or family members, or did you let the cat out of the bag afterwards? And then I'm just curious, what was their reaction?
Well, as I mentioned, that company was starting to do
Hmm.
layoffs.
Yeah.
And so they obviously had to know. And obviously, some friends knew because, like I said, Melissa, who was my friend, who's now working for me, and the neighborhood knew it because I put it out there to my neighbors, and everyone was extremely positive, except for my dad.
Mm.
My
Did you
dad,
anticipate that?
yes, yes.
Okay. Okay.
My dad is very old fashioned. And again, you're not going to be number one. You're never going to make the, top of the charts. You're never going to be that star. You need to have a level head and get a real job. Right. So when I
Mm.
said, I'm just going to go take care of dogs, he's like, well, how are you going to make money? And he had a lot of great questions,
Yeah.
but he truly thought I was making the biggest mistake of my life. He
Mm.
said, and I'd done my work, my research. I'd looked into basically the pet industry, what happened in, between 2008 and 2010 with the big recession and people losing their homes and all that. The amount of money that was spent on pet care, whether it was grooming, pet supplies, sitting, it didn't matter, actually grew during that time.
Wow.
Mhm. People didn't pull back spending on their animals. people actually poured more money into it. And to me, that made a lot of sense because I was that person, right? I was that person who said, well, if I'm nesting, I'm going to do it with my dogs. I would cut back on other things so to make sure that I can do what I need to for my animals. And I wasn't alone. So I saw that. I also felt empowered because I was the one making the decisions. I felt like it was good that I did what I did for so many years. I got to learn all the things that, in my view, were the right things and the wrong things to do
Mm-hmm,
in corporate.
mm-hmm.
I saw management styles that look great and management styles that weren't. I saw business decisions that I didn't understand and make sense to me. And in my view, actually were very poor ones. And then some that were really wonderful. So I felt like I had a better education than I could have, gone to college and studied something like this.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was very confident that I could do it. I was very
Mm-hmm.
confident. Maybe silly of me, but it didn't stop me. My father really sat me down and he's like, I cannot support this. I'm like, it's okay. I'm still going to go to it. Now, my mom, my aunt who was visiting at the time, my sister, and all my friends were like, oh, this is brilliant. Yeah, you should do this. They were quite proud, right? They were quite proud that I had enough. I've done my research. I'd figured out how much I needed to charge, how much I needed to work for, how to, set up the business. I had all that lined up. And to be honest, my dad still regrets that I'm not in the banking business. It's okay though. When he calls me up, he actually answers the phone. Whoa, 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 whoa. I know. And he always asks me, so how many wows do you have today? Um,
Oh, I think that's a
so,
way of accepting, right?
right, in his own way,
Yeah,
definitely.
that's beautiful.
But he did. I mean, not too long ago. It was before we moved to Virginia. So, and my guess is about 4 years ago. I'm sitting in the living room with in my father's house, my parents' house. They have a friend over, and my dad says to me, he says, well, I mean, you gave up being a VP at a bank. And I said, did I? I may have given up being a VP at a bank, but I am the CEO of my own company. To him, it's a small company. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
but to me, it's everything.
Yeah,
I think having the knowledge that I could do it, the faith that I had gained enough experience, life experience, work experience,
mm-hmm.
that I was going to do this right.
Yeah, yeah,
And that I would have to learn lots still, but knowing what I was like, with animals, there was really no doubt in my mind that this was the exact thing I needed to do.
yeah. When we think about unlost cause, it's about living a life true to yourself, right? And at the end of your earlier career in finance, you said you started feeling like a fraud, which is a very strong word. And then when you jumped in and you started this new job and you own your own dog walking pet care business, did that fraudulent feeling just dissolve instantly, or how did that change?
No, it was instant. It was instant.
Instant.
And in fact, as I said, I was hoping they would lay me off. I knew that this was what I needed to do. And because it was a layoff, got severance, which was very helpful. Like I said,
Hmm.
it all felt like it was falling into place.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I took an educated leap, perhaps,
Yes.
but I listened for the first time, to myself.
Yeah. And in terms of like transferable skills from your past role to owning this business, what were some of the skills that you felt were transferable?
So, management, I think I learned a lot about what made a good manager and what made a poor manager. I had definitely had incredible customer skills. So, I knew how to work with customers, but management was a big thing. I also knew that I needed to have budgets, that I needed to have balance sheets, that I needed to
Hmm.
have business accounts. I needed to have insurance on the company.
Yes.
There were all these little things that to me made sense. I worked on my website by myself. I did my own pricing. I did all my homework on how should I price myself? I would have people who would tell me, you should do discounts and you should go to Groupon and you should do all this. And I said, absolutely not, because I know what demographic I'm going after. So
Mm-hmm.
knowing the demographic and knowing who your audience is, I've never discounted ever, because
Mm-hmm.
one thing I did learn, and this was very transparent to me, was the moment you set a price, if you want to increase it, you're going to lose customers, because those customers that were using you because you were cheap. They love the value, but they're not willing to pay more. So if I did a Groupon, I'd get a customer for a day. They would never turn into, or
Mm-hmm.
unlikely turn into a long-term customer, because that's not what they were looking for. They were looking for the one and done, right? I mean, that's what I use Groupon for. It's what I use the discounts for. I'm not going there to become a loyal customer. I'm going there for the, for the discount.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and privacy.
Mm.
I'm not big on social media, and I don't tell people who my customers are. I leave it to my customers to spread the word of mouth. One of the big things in banking is privacy. You don't talk about who your
Mm-hmm.
customers are. Nope, not at all. So I had an image. I had a very distinct idea of how I wanted to create this business, who my customers were going to be, who my workers were going to be, or my contractors were going to be. And that was extremely clear. And
Mm-hmm.
I think because I had seen how that dynamic of discounting and, loose lips sink ships and that kind of thing, that stuck with me very much. So yeah, it gave me a nice solid structure to then build upon. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how has the business evolved since the day you wrote that initial check?
Well, I've grown. There are things that
Yeah.
I thought I knew dogs.
Mm.
Wow, I have learned so much more about dogs than I realized I needed to know. I have had, everyone has their stumbles and bumbles and missteps. Another thing, going back to your earlier question, was how to manage a crisis.
Mm.
So I learned one of the skills that I got from the corporate world was you own up to your mistake
Yeah.
and you make it right. Even though you may or may not retain that customer, my fault, I own it. I will make it right and then we'll move on. And so there have been a couple of crises that happened, but we're still standing because it was dealt with in an appropriate manner, in a manner where, I took responsibility. I was compassionate. I did not try and hide and run away. No,
Yeah.
I faced it face on. And so there have been stumbles and bumbles, but, we continue to grow in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
We continue to grow here. And it's because we take a very honest approach and a very forthright approach to what we do. So that's grown that way, getting to know all these different dogs. I never taken care of a hound before. Now we have all sorts of hounds and they've got their own little quirks. And I got to know some dogs that had been incorrectly labeled as aggressive. I learned so much.
Mm-hmm.
Things are running through my head as to everything that I'd learned, but it has definitely evolved. It keeps being fun though. It keeps being I think the worst thing are the taxes and the paperwork and
Yeah.
the licensing and all of that administrative stuff. I'm the IT guy. I really need to fire myself. I seriously good IT. But what has not changed though is the basic principle of I don't advertise. I do have a Google page. I will post up some pictures and then I do ask for reviews, but I just work with my customers and tell them, if you really like what I do and you know somebody who can use us, please, make the introduction. And the relationships that I've built with customers because of it has been great. Two of my contractors in Salt Lake have been and still are customers,
Wow.
right?
That's awesome.
This is a very personal business.
Yes.
At
Yes.
least I think it should.
Yeah. So if you zoom out, what has been the scariest part of the leap? And then on the other hand, what's been the one that's brought you the most fulfillment of starting this or buying this business and growing it?
So I'm going to start with the latter.
Okay.
The most fulfilling, I get the most fulfillment when I've worked with a dog and a customer to help that dog and that customer to both have a better relationship between them because they figured each other out, because I have
Wow.
provided a service that helps that dog be a better dog. You've heard the phrase, a tired dog is a good dog.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Oh, really? Okay.
I often will, for new dog owners, perhaps give them guidance that, just like in human relationships, you need to have, sometimes have to be a parent more than a friend, helping them find the right resources. But most of all, seeing a dog that, like I said, may have been considered aggressive and never allowed to be a dog, and then
Mm,
give them friends that they now run around with, or helping that person get through a hard time because I was able to take care of specifically their dog, but whatever animal it was, to be that surrogate. So
mm,
what I find fulfilling is bringing out the best in a dog that I can and being that village for my customers. I
mm-hmm.
I have a really strong relationship with a lot of my customers, and if I don't, my contractors do.
Yeah.
And so the second thing that's been most fulfilling is providing for some of my contractors the most wonderful job in the world. I get thanked a lot. They're like, the
Yeah.
best job ever. And I'm the one who did that, right? I
Yes.
I
Yes.
provided them that. I provided
Yes.
them opportunity, a different world. Some of them do it part-time, some of them do it full-time. Here's a story for you. I saw this guy with this dog at the dog park all the time, and he was always very quiet, but I watched him with his dog, and he had trained his dog, this husky, and voice commands, but a lot of it was also grunts and, hand signals and marking and whatnot. And so after watching him for a year, and we were looking to Mark and I, Mark, my current husband, my lovely partner in life, we were both looking to either perhaps one of us to become trainers or to hire a trainer. And it kind of hit me. I'm like, well, Mark, you've seen this guy work. What do you think? He's like, yeah, I guess so too. So I approached him
Mm,
one day at the park and I said, are you a trainer? And he's like, no. He said, have you ever thought about being one? Because we really, really good. I mean, I could just see the talent in you. And he's like, well, yeah, I'd love to. I said, well, if you're ever interested in doing it, I'd like to sit down and talk to you about sponsoring you. He looks at me and he says, but you're in a little mom and pop shop, aren't you? I said, yeah, yeah. Yes, we are. And if you want to have a conversation, let's have it. He's now a dog trainer for us. He's got,
whoa,
Yep.
yay.
I love the fact that I provided this opportunity. I'm not a big business. That doesn't mean I don't affect a lot of people,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? And if I can be a positive effect, people will refer people to me. My ex-boss at another ex-boss at my former corporate world job said, I used to talk to you about my mother who runs marathons. She's in her, late 60s or 70s. She wants to walk dogs and she was thinking about going on Rover. And I said, she should call you. So she became a contractor.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's the opportunity for other people to realize their dream or maybe partial dream or give them an ability to at least fulfill, scratch that itch, get that reward that I when
Yeah.
I did my job,
Yeah.
right? So that fulfillment, those are the things, making the dog's life better, making the customer's life better, and making my community better.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. No,
really
that's
is so powerful for me, and it gets me up in the morning, and makes me so very proud of what we've done.
yeah. Yeah.
The biggest challenges, though, was that first year where I was in the middle of getting a divorce. I didn't know all the possible regrets of what you had done before. the uncertainty that you would ever come out of the house again, that, how are you going to do this? Of course, all of that creeps in.
Mm-hmm.
And that first year was difficult, but it was also incredibly fulfilling. I had to learn how to not just do things on my phone. I had to eventually, figure out a good way to use. Eventually we went onto an app. But we had, futzed around with calendars and Google Docs and so on and so forth to get scheduling. And as we added more people on, more customers, that became overwhelming. So, like I said, I've had stumbles and bumbles,
Yeah.
but we've learned from them. But the second biggest hurdle and challenge was when we realized that what we wanted to do, because what we found was controlling your environment where you take dogs, you can't. So you're going to run into people that don't pick up the dog poop, that ignore their dogs and let their dogs harass all the other dogs around, who don't want dogs off leash in an area. I had one gentleman who was walking on the dog off leash section of City Creek in his suit instead of walking on the other side, which dogs were not allowed on, kind of complaining that the dogs were all running up to him. It wasn't just my dogs, it was other people's dogs. I'm like, dude, we're on the wrong side.
Yeah.
But you can't control that. And we had, like I mentioned, some aggressive dogs that may have been mislabeled. So, or some that you needed to find weird hours of the day to allow to run, because all dogs need to run. All dogs have that wild spirit that they need to get it out. And there's nothing to me that is more joyful than to see a dog in full on ecstasy, running,
Mm-hmm.
jumping, frolicking in the water. That brings me unbridled joy.
Oh.
And but we couldn't do that in Salt Lake, and our backyard was, a postage stamp. And even though we did daycare out of the house, and we knew where to hike the dogs or what dog parks were, better than others, we felt confined.
Mm-hmm.
So we started looking in Salt Lake for the opportunity to do it there. And after 5 years of looking, couldn't find the land, or, with the proximity to Salt Lake within a budget.
Yeah.
And so the second biggest challenge was deciding to move out of state, where to go, and take a huge leap. So that first year, we're now on our third year here in Virginia, was how to make the transition. So that was huge. Took months and months, not only getting the small business loan, but getting people trained and in place so that I could feel like I could leave and kind of let the universe, I had to get it prepped,
Yeah.
but then to let it go and let it do its own thing. So we still run the Salt Lake business, and we have it here, but that was the second biggest challenge, was expanding.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
And
And I got married and all of that. So it was that.
oh man. And then so, oftentimes they say it takes a village to do anything consequential. And I really do think anyone who has the courage to tackle a lost cause and turn it into unlost cause, it takes a village. Who are your mentors or role models, or, could be from your youth to when you were older, or other business owners? How did you find that support to help you along the way? Because it can either be lonely, there could be other people who've solved that problem that you can leverage. So tell me about that support network that Veronica sought and built around her.
I have to say that I have some very close girlfriends, particularly, who supported and encouraged me, kept telling me that they kept reflecting back someone that I wasn't quite sure was there. So they kept showing me who they thought I was, and who they thought I was successful. They
Mm-hmm.
kept reminding me that I've got the people skills, I've got the dog skills, I have the background, that I could do this. I saw people who had unconventional jobs
Mm-hmm.
that were happy not doing the 9 to 5 right. And they weren't necessarily, super rich, or, but they had a better life.
Yeah.
And life. And one of my friends, she's a writer, she's a professor, and she ran a bridal magazine in Salt Lake for many years as the editor. The fact that she bounced here and there, but was able to, from the start, do her passion. I have friends who are dancers who parlayed that into nonprofit, community, dance oriented
Hmm.
projects, and we're also professors because, at the point, you get too old to dance. Folks that were and still are doing the grind who would tell me, we'd love to have you do this. I can't do this yet, but I'm going to look through you.
Mm.
So, and then one person in particular who I met when we moved up to the Avenues, she's an incredible lady, would just introduce me to everyone that when we were walking our dogs together. Well, this is my friend Veronica. She owns a fabulous business. Look at her with her dogs. She takes care of my dog. She was just quintessential my walking advertising. And when I was having a bad day, she's a yoga therapist. And now she runs, she's the director for the Cancer Wellness Survivor Center in Salt Lake.
Wow.
She was my spiritual and physical touchstone. When
Mm.
I was having a bad day, she's like, okay, let's go walk the dogs and we'll do some yoga in the middle of it. I need you to breathe. I need you to
Mm.
breathe. And having those people, yeah, having that kind of support when I was having a bad day,
Yeah. Yeah.
when I didn't know where to go next, they were just open sounding boards that encouraged me,
Yeah. Yeah.
would help me look at the pros and cons. But when I just needed a hug or legs up the wall,
Hmm.
if you know anything about yoga poses,
Hmm.
would give you their version, a healthy version
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
how to deal with stress, how to break through that barrier that usually it's very mental,
Yeah.
right? So that was my community. I didn't have anyone in particular. Like I said, growing up, what I found was that community.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky.
Yeah, it sounds like you found this like wonderful group of people who created resiliency and a support network. And at the same time, earlier on, you were talking about pricing strategy and so forth. I'm like, wow, she actually did a lot of her research. I mean, you weren't just all on intuition. So I'm curious, were there other books, podcasts, blogs, SBA resources that you leverage that, people who are in your shoes should take a look at?
Yeah, so it started out very early on before I even thought about doing anything with dogs. I just read everything about, interesting articles about dogs, how I found out about the love hormone and oxytocin. But I started listening to Ian Dunbar. He is a renowned dog trainer, and his way of training dogs is a very gentle, it doesn't believe in punishment. It believes in rewarding and consistency. And he really tries to get you to think like a dog. One of
Mm,
his recent ones, so I still listen to him, because I always need a refresher. Everybody needs engineering education,
of
right?
course.
He's like, all right, so you call up your dog and your dog's smelling something. He doesn't come over right away. And you call him a second time and then you get really loud and he finally comes over. And then what do? You put him on a leash, you yank him, and you tell him, "Bad boy," right? So the dog's all confused because he thinks he did what you asked him to. So he did this experiment with somebody and said, "Okay, I'm going to tell you to sit, and if you do it wrong, I will be mad at you." And so, like, okay. And there were 4 chairs. It's like, "Sit." And the guy would go down and sit at one chair, and he'd yell at him, "No, I told you to sit." I'm like, "Okay, well, then I'll try another chair and try another chair." And his point was that you need to learn how to communicate. And dogs don't have a full vocabulary. So you have
Hmm.
to think about what is it that they're actually responding to. And I know that every time I call a dog over, I'm going to be as happy. I don't care how upset I am that they didn't come the first time. I'm going to work that they come the first time, but they'll
Hmm.
never get castigated for coming to me. They
Yeah.
need to know that coming to me is the thing that they should always do because it will always be rewarded. with all my love, treats, whatever. Because
Mm-hmm.
the moment you start punishing them after they've come back to you, they start associating coming to you with punishment,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have several books that I don't have around me right now, but training books. There is one that was suggested to me. They're done by these monks who train dogs.
Whoa.
I mean, I read so much about, psychology of dog training. Now, I'm not a dog trainer, but I found that that was huge for me to understand dogs. I've got stories of, walking on the trail with 5 dogs. I'd see a bicyclist coming down, the dogs that I was always aware of my surroundings, the dogs that I knew that might go after them on a leash, and the rest of them hand signals, "All right, let's get off the trail." Have them all sit, have the bicyclist go, and then they'd all get rewarded. "Okay, now let's go." Um,
Mm-mm.
Finding what I needed, my gap. So going to the books about training, going to the books that unlike, and I don't mean to badmouth him because I don't think he's bad, but I don't like the way Cesar Chavez, for instance, says, "You got to be this aggressive, dominant person."
Mm-mm.
I'm not aggressive. I don't necessarily pin dogs down or anything like that. I do ignore them if they're not behaving. I don't give them unstructured love, meaning
Mm-mm.
that they don't get treats just for everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but I do give them the safe place to be. I like it when they're feeling overwhelmed, they continue.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
don't go run away.
yeah.
So the Ian Dunbar, definitely a huge I look up to how he trains but there are several books that I can later reference if anyone's ever interested. They've just been great. As for knowing to, get insurance, to my due diligence, that came from my time as a stockbroker because I saw a lot of projects fail because they didn't know who they really, were targeting,
Mm-hmm.
um, what they thought they knew what they wanted, but they got a different result. Why was that? So I studied that. So no formal training there, just a lot of experience of seeing what actually worked and what didn't in a
Mm-hmm.
big corporate situation,
Yeah.
environment.
So then how has pursuing this dream changed how you see yourself?
I'm a confident person. I'm also a happier person. I love the fact that I'm the one who's in charge of whether I fail or succeed.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very scary place, perhaps, to be, but I'm not scared.
Mm.
And I find that I have more room to grow. And I have, in that growth area, the ability to put out a hand and help somebody else grow as well. I would not have been that person had I stayed in the finance world. I am a kind of person that likes to give up their time, and I think that has to also come with age.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't think at 22,
Yeah.
I've had the confidence to have that confidence in myself and like approach a stranger who is struggling with their dog that's pulling in a certain way. I literally will just stop by and like, "Such a sweet dog. What's your dog's name?" So and so. "Can I try something? Is that okay?" So I'm not in your face or anything. I'm just, "Can I try something?" Yeah. And I'll redo the leash maybe on the harness or something like that. And we'll talk about a few little things. And people are like, "Wow, they're going to need a difference."
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I just walk off. I mean, I'm not there to get a new customer. I'm just there because, again, I really want people to have a good relationship with their dogs, the dogs to have a good relationship with your people. And there are so many well-meaning people that don't, they just don't know that what they're doing may be harmful. Like one of the biggest things is if you've got a dog that refuses to potty outside or potty on their walk, for instance, it's probably because you have inadvertently taught them that the moment they potty, the dog walks over. They're in it for the dog walk, not to go potty, but you're out there to make sure that they potty. So how do you, fix that? Well, you don't turn around the moment that they're done, right? You do the full on walk.
Yeah.
praise them when they do it. And when they get home, they've had all the stimulation that they needed, and they're like, "Oh, it's just what I do on my walk. It's not the
Hmm.
purpose."
Yeah.
All these little things that help. Yeah, how you hold the leash, how you address them, how to ignore them when they're misbehaving, so that they learn that if they want attention to
Yeah.
all four paws on the ground, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And given the growth of your business and the expansion, there's a lot of things, probably a million things going on at the same time. Have you allowed yourself to take a break and to exhale and be proud of what you've done?
On the rare occasion that we take a vacation, yes.
And what are
Uh,
you most proud of accomplishing?
but I've managed to not sink my business in Salt Lake. No, sincerely, expansion is a really hard thing for a business to do. I don't care if you're Walmart, Coca-Cola, or Dog and Butterfly. There's a lot of risk in expanding. And I'm extremely proud that Salt Lake is doing well, that the people that work for me and my customers are all still very happy. I didn't want to I didn't want to leave Salt Lake and shut down the Salt Lake business. All those dogs and all those owners meant so much to me.
Mm,
And the people who I employed meant so much to me. So I think that I have managed to juggle as still a very small business, 2 locations without losing all these customers or all these employees.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The trend is to, trim down the amount of people that work for you, and that's fine. Get another, customer coming in if you do this. I'm very proud that the loyalty and the commitment that I got my customers and my contractors, I've been able to reflect back,
Yeah.
to give back.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
extremely proud of the community. I really am. I
Yeah.
really
Well, you should be. That's amazing, Veronica. And if you were, let's say, on your deathbed and you didn't take that leap and you didn't write that check, how do you think you would feel in that instance?
Well, I would be dead a lot sooner than I think I will. And though I am a positive person, I know I would be less.
Mm,
I would probably be a little bitter. I see my father a little bitter, and I've been able to do something completely out of the box. I've inspired people. My cousins in Chile were inspired that I did a corporate job and started my business. I mean, right? It's if that's how I give back, then I'm extremely proud of that. And that's not who I would.
yeah. Yeah.
That's not who I
And
would have.
yeah, and I think about it, complete the sentence for me. Stockbroker was to suffocated as dog walker is to blank.
Freedom.
That's a powerful word. That's a powerful word. And, since, the Unlost Cause is a community and we're in this together, what ask would you like to make of our audience?
So I had been thinking about that, and I think the ask that I would have for the community is not for myself, it's for them.
Mm,
Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself, but do the homework.
yes.
Do what you need to do to make sure that you are doing things appropriately. Focus in where you need to. Eject anything that is not positive, that's not supportive, and embrace those who see your vision and who will support you, who will be honest feedback, who will give you honest feedback. But the biggest thing is believe in yourself. But do it because not just because it is what you want to do, but do it not haphazardly.
Mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
do your homework.
Yeah.
Do your homework.
I-
Yeah.
It's very
Uh,
clear that, yeah, you did your homework and your
yeah.
diligence.
And believe in your own mission. And that's the other thing, I think, is what is your mission? And stay true to that. Don't
Yeah,
let other people show you that that's not the way to go.
yeah.
Yeah. Don't let the
And
fathers in this world say, you can't make it.
Can't wait to see hear his reaction once he gets to view this. So, how can the audience support or connect with you moving forward if they, resonate with this like I am?
Well, I am online. Like I said, I do have social media accounts, but I don't really interact with them. I just don't have time.
Hmm.
And for me, I'm going to go back to the privacy thing.
Yeah.
I'm very careful about when I do post pictures that I've actually talked to the customers and gotten their permission to post a picture. I don't
Hmm.
name who the dogs are. I don't
Hmm.
name who the customers are. Now, if the customers want to go, hey, that's my dog. That's great. That's
Hmm.
great. But if they want to connect with me, can find me actually probably best at dogandbutterflyslc.com or Google me, Jasmine's on Frog Pond here in Stanton, Virginia, named after Jasmine. Who-
Yay.
That's my girl.
Oh, cute.
She passed away. It's 2020, the height of
COVID.
unfortunately.
Mm,
But this place is named after her.
beautiful.
So either place or I can be found. I'm not incognito. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer questions, talk about more specifically some things. And if they want references, sorry I didn't have them, book references of the study material
Yep.
that I took, right? But I'd be happy to give them that. As for SBA, I kind of bumbled through that, but I did find that that there are chapters in every state that help formulate SBA loans and help you formulate how to get one and take whatever your next step is seriously. Don't
Hmm.
look at it as hobby.
Yeah.
Uh-uh. No, you're going to do this. It's going to be a life change. Grab it, hold on to it, let it buck you a little bit, but enjoy the ride. So yeah, if they want to get a hold of me, they can find me that way.
Yeah. Well, I'll get all the information we'll put in the show notes for people who want to follow up. And so, Veronica, in closing, your story is super inspiring. It's delightful. And not just because, you built this wonderful business, but even you painted this picture of the tarot cards, right? You gave yourself permission to walk through. And the only thing holding you back was yourself and like society's expectations. But you didn't let fear or those expectations kind of drive your world. You made it on your terms. You had agency and self-belief. So thank you again for sharing your journey. And for everyone listening, if the conversation resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone else who needs a little inspiration to take that leap. Until next time, keep pushing forward and living with no regrets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you go, if you're inspired and want to be a part of something bigger, subscribe, like, and share to help more people reclaim their dreams and live true to themselves. Also, let me know if you or someone you know would be an inspiring guest on this show. Together, let's spark courage to live without regrets. The Unlost Causeway, one story and one person at a time.
I was lost till I fell in your eyes. Had me wondering why I feel like home. I hold you close so you're by my side till the end